Well. Jeff Capel is trying to make moves on the recruiting trail. Five-star recruit Dior Johnson decommitted from Oregon, and Pitt is now in his top three. What in the world is going on here? How serious is this? And could Pitt actually land him? This could be a program changer. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Philadelphia area recruiting. Jahsear Whittington doing some recruiting himself there. They continue to get visitors from there. We're going to talk all about Pennsylvania recruiting outside of the Whitfield. It's all coming up today on this episode of Locked On Pitt.
Are Locked On Pitt, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pitt podcast, your daily podcast covering the Pittsburgh Panthers. As always, if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. If you are listening to this, make sure to leave a review, do all those great things. Folks, today's episode of the Locked On Pitt podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And folks, big time stuff happening in the land of Pitt basketball. And we have talked about that last scholarship spot a little bit, about what it could potentially go to, who it could potentially go to. Sekou Diawara was a name that had been brought up. Seems like that ship has sailed a little bit. But now, it seemed more and more likely that maybe Pitt just wouldn't fill it and that they would just leave it there. Couldn't find someone that was maybe worthy of that. So they said, okay, whatever. We will just fill it later. And we will go to the 2023 class with another guaranteed scholarship that we know is open. We feel good about our team. Then the rarity happens, the rare June decommit of not just a really good player, one of the best players in the entire 2022 class in Dior Johnson. And this is a guy that is a top 40 guard, right? He's down to three teams: Mississippi State, Pitt, and Wazoo, Washington State. This is crazy. I mean, did anyone expect Pitt to show up in this top three? Seeing him decommit, maybe you thought there was a possibility they'd reach out, but you would figure a lot of other teams would too. But Pitt, it feels like, is as in this as anybody. This is truly incredible right now. Because who in the world actually would have thought about this as a possibility? Now, we can get into Johnson's history, path to this point. It's a crazy one. Of course it is. Was committed to Syracuse at one time during his February of his sophomore year. Decommitted from there. Then committed to Oregon last year. Decommitted from there. He's been at 10 different high schools throughout his high school career. This has been a circus journey of sorts for Dior Johnson. But that rating is high. 4-star, 38th ranked in the nation by rivals. So he's thought of very highly in that regard. ESPN has him as a 4-star. So you know that he's a consensus 4-star at the very least. 24/7, same thing, 4-star. This is a guy that on every site is a 4-star. And he's grown up around NBA players. We've heard about him. He is one of those guys that has been hyped up for a very long time. So he's got a brand already, right? People know who Dior Johnson is because he's a guy that has highlight videos since his freshman year, played with guys like Isaiah Stewart, who played in the NBA when he was 12 years old. He's done so much. and he's been doing so much. This is a guy that has everything you look for in a requisite point guard. A phenomenal player by all accounts. And so, when do you get this opportunity this late in the process? Pitt has a scholarship opening, a need for a game changer. This is the year. Understand this, right? This is the year. It is put up or shut up time. If you are not going to do anything in this year as Jeff Capel, if you're not going to throw the kitchen sink, what are you doing? He is doing everything in his power to try and get this thing done. He's added a lot of quality ads. He's added a lot of shooting. He's added a lot of different skill sets. He's kind of redefined Pitt's recruiting picture in terms of the 2023 class. There's some legitimate momentum here. And again, we've talked about this. Doesn't mean they're going to be good. Absolutely not. Doesn't mean that they are intriguing. Whew. Yeah. This team is at the very least nothing more intriguing. And you add Dior Johnson to this team. This thing becomes a little bit more than just intriguing. This thing becomes, oh, now you have that guy, one of the best recruits in the class of 2022, a guy that has been hyped up for years. You haven't seen a guy like this with this type of buzz come through this program in a very long time. A very long time. Steven Adams had a lot of hype. I would say last guy that I can think of that had this type of buzz, maybe not nationally, but locally, because of who he was and the type of guy he was. He was a guy that had just grown up outside of Oakland. He was the hometown kid through and through. It was the type of kid you really wanted in DeJuan Blair. And we're just talking about a guy in Dior Johnson who has an unbelievable brand. I mean, he has over 500,000 followers on Instagram. He's got a highlight tape with nearly 1 million views. This is the type of guy that has just gone viral, essentially. There's a buzz to this guy, and it's for good reason. It's not just hype. No, it's not like this guy doesn't back it up, right? He doesn't say, have what you look for. Well, this guy can play. He's got good shooting ability, works to create off the dribble, can work as a point guard, really good passer, good vision, explosiveness. He's a good player. He might be the most talented player on this Pitt team if he comes in right away, just pure skills wise. If we look at what he actually brings to the table, he might be that guy. This would be a huge land for Jeff Capel. But let's talk about how possible it is, the circumstances surrounding this, some concerns, and what in the world we have to think about here. But first, let me let you know about BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL hockey finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fightings from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast. Talking about Dior Johnson here, who has dropped a surprise top 3 that included Pitt. This came out of left field. I don't think anyone saw this coming. We hadn't even seen Pitt and Dior Johnson connected. This is a complete blindside in terms of Pitt and a recruit. Very much like the Cassius McNeely deal, right? Another guy that was been pretty hyped up, and all of a sudden, he's a Pitt Panther. Didn't expect it to happen, but he's here. And Dior Johnson's journey is such a windy road. It's one that has led on many turns. And you wonder, why he hasn't been able to find his stable home in high school or a stable home in college. There's a desire clearly to go pro here. He's a one and done true guy. And I've heard a few things. One, he's a true one and done guy. This is what he wants to be. He wants to go to the pros. He's a very talented player. So he wants a coach that can cultivate what he has and really blossom his skill set into a pro skill set. But in order to do that, he's going to have to buy into a specific program. So that's going to be the question. How willing is he going to be to do that, or how non-willing is he to do that? Because we know that this guy's so talented. He's probably got a good opportunity to just go pro next year, whether that be the NBA or elsewhere. Had pro opportunities this year, could have gone to Australia if he wanted to. But very talented. And this is a type of recruit that's so big. This would be the highest recruit of Jeff Capel's tenure if they were to land Dior Johnson. He would be the highest rated recruit, more than Trey McGowan's, more than John Hughley, more than anyone else. Audi's Tony, you name them, you list them. This would be the highest recruit that would commit to Pitt. Would be absolutely huge, right? Just an absolutely huge commitment for Pitt. And I don't know. Is he going to be able to find that stable environment? And, I think there are a few things. First of all, the playing time, how much is he going to be featured? What type of relationship does he have with the coach? I think he's going to need a strong relationship with the coach that trusts him, that they trust each other, they have that mutual trust. I think Jeff Capel could be that guy. But I think that's the big concern here is he down for the stability of this, or would he have been better off? And I think that this is kind of the point here is, would he have just been better off, say, going to Australia and maybe exploring that pro route and trying to get some more professional training here rather than saying go to school and rather not just train 24/7 at basketball. You have to go to classes at school, you have to do all this stuff. If you get NIL deals, you obviously have to take out those sponsorship responsibilities as well. So that's time, right? So there's a lot more responsibility at the college level. But maybe he feels like, he wants to experience that a little bit. And that's certainly possible. That is certainly possible. But this is a guy that's going to be an NBA player. He's got that talent. He's a true three-level threat. He's a great slasher. He's explosive. He's long. He's got a lot of great things in his arsenal. Very talented player. And that's why this one to me is just so worth it. Because as I said, this is it. This is it. Jeff Capel doesn't have time, folks. He doesn't. It's not like he can sit here and say, I got 3 more years. If this was year 1 or 2, maybe you could scrutinize this a little more. You can't right now. This is a no-lose situation. The worst that could happen is that, yeah, he figures out, man, college isn't for me. I'm going to go pro. I'm going to bail. And in that case, that's what it is, right? And that's what it is. But Jeff Capel can't look to pass up on a guy with this talent that could be a program change. We're talking about an NBA talent here at point guard. Point guard. The one thing Pitt has needed his entire tenure. This could be him. Dior Johnson could be the guy. He could be the guy that Jeff Capel has been looking for all along. This is really what it comes down to. And again, for Pitt as a program, best case scenario is this is the shot in the arm they needed, and Pitt is back, baby. You get NIT, NCAA run, and you're in it. And you're loving it. And Dior Johnson becomes folklore in Pitt basketball history as the guy that came and saved the program. Worst case scenario, he leaves early or maybe, gets hurt, whatever, fizzles out. Pitt has another bad year. And Pitt's probably looking for a new coach and rebuilding the whole roster. Both are realistic. And then there's, of course, the middle ground of that as well. But this really is a no-lose situation. And Dior Johnson is one of those rarely talented players that just doesn't come available at this time of year. And for whatever circumstances that this happened for, Pitt is in this and it's serious. And I'm hearing that it's serious. And of course, Mississippi State has the official visit right now scheduled. So you read those tea leaves, and obviously, I would imagine that you would think that, yes, that is the team that probably has the front line here, has the B line to them. But Pitt's in this thing. It is legitimately in this thing. Don't count out Pitt. We'll see how everything transpires, but it's possible. It is literally possible. So we'll see if Pitt can close on Dior Johnson. Would be a huge pickup. It's a no-lose situation for the Panthers. Guys like this don't come around very often. Such a talented player, man. Such a talented player. We'll see if they can close. I think this is going to be a pretty quick decision. Again, it's already June 13th, so you got to get the transcripts transferred. You got to get enrolled in classes. So it's coming up very soon to where Johnson's going to need his class schedule set and all that stuff. He's going to need to get that set, get enrolled in whatever school that he wants to get into. So that's going to be key. And he's going to need to be, with the team and learning everything. So you would expect this decision to be within a week or two at the most. Maybe takes 2 or 3 official visits. I think this is between Pitt and Mississippi State. So we'll see how it ends up. But this is big for Pitt if they can land them. I think that at this point you have to be optimistic about that, but we'll see. We will see. It's going to be a little uphill battle without the visit, of course, but Pitt has the built-in relationship here. He knows a few guys on the team. Nike Sabandi and John Hughley has a decent relationship with Jeff Capel. We'll see where this thing goes. All right, folks, I want to shift over to football and talk about Pennsylvania recruiting as a whole. But first, let's go to a quick break. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast. We're shifting from Dior Johnson to football recruiting in terms of the eastern part of Pennsylvania. And very, very interesting to me about this entire thing is when we talk about the football recruiting, and we've talked about the Whippeal and Pitt striking out in the Whippeal this year and how weird that was and how it seemed like they actually went backwards after they won the ACC championship with guys like Tamir Robinson and Rodney Gallagher. And then the rest of the class just wasn't talented enough to where they would throw the offer out. It's such a weird kind of sequence. And so Pitt ended up probably with no Whippeal commits this year. Now, there's still the possibility that they maybe offer a guy like Cam Cheatham or someone like that, and they do end up with a Whippeal commit here, but probably not going to happen. And so if your Whippeal recruiting is actually down, but the rest of the state is up, how much of a loss is that? I don't know. But Pitt's made a lot of inroads recently, a lot of decent inroads in the central and eastern part of the states. And this is a new revelation. Again, these are not places that Pitt traditionally pulls from. A lot of these guys go to Penn State or elsewhere. Philadelphia, in particular, is a complete battleground area where SEC schools routinely come in and pull kids out of there. Penn State has a plentiful pipeline there. Notre Dame does as well. You see teams like North Carolina coming in there. It's a tough battleground area. But Pitt already has a 4-star recruit out of there in the class of 2024 in Jahsear Whittington, and he's putting it down for Pitt. And he's trying to get guys like Kenny Wosley and Willie Love and other really good players in that class to come to Pitt. And that is something that Pitt has not had. They haven't had a guy out of the eastern part of the state like that. And that is something that you really have to love to me. You have to look at that and say, man, Pitt's doing something different. And then they get Kenny Johnson to commit in the class of 2023 out of Dallastown. And that's, in the Eastern, but more Eastern Central. That's Penn State country, folks. And Pitt doesn't get anyone from out there. But this is actually kind of following what Pitt has done in the overall student body. And I've been wondering when this is going to catch up because Pitt in the general student population is pulling a lot from Philly, pulling a lot from the Jersey area, pulling a lot from DC. These are areas that Pitt football wise has had some good recruiting success with. Jersey and DC. They've had some recruiting success there, Maryland as well. Of those three, they have had decent pipelines too every now and then. Obviously, Pitt has landed some great players out of New Jersey. Kenny Pickett being the most obvious, out of Maryland, Jordan Addison being the most obvious there, but plenty of other examples I can name. John Morgan, right? So you look at other guys like that. But that eastern part of the state is like a wasteland for Pitt over their history. That central eastern part, even more so. They just don't land guys out of that area. And so to have a guy like Whittington that's recruiting guys from that area and trying to get the Pitt rep in Philadelphia up more. And then you get a guy like Kenny Johnson, a really talented guy that was sought after by Penn State and multiple other high Division One programs. Another big commit. And then you have another guy in 2024 that you're going to have to really look out for in Alex Irby, who's a quarterback from Harrisburg. And folks, this, to say the least, is Penn State area. Pitt doesn't go into Harrisburg and pull out kids. And Irby has a good few offers: Louisville, Maryland, Minnesota, Nebraska, Rutgers. And if he continues his upward trend, you know that the Penn State offer's coming. It's going to come. And so that's someone to look out for. Pitt has been getting into Central PA and Eastern PA more. And these are really talented areas. There are a few guys out of Central PA every year that end up playing really well at a lot of different schools. Penn State has a great pipeline from that area, obviously. That's essentially their home territory. And that's why it was so surprising to see Pitt go in and pluck Kenny Johnson out of there. But this is what Pitt has to do. If they're not going to land a ton of Whippeal guys, well, let's go to the eastern part and grab one or two guys there. Again, you're not going to have a ton of heavy Whippeal recruits that come from different areas, right? You're not going to have usually 4 or 5 Whippeal recruits. Now, Pitt's done that recently when they had the whole, the Kai Johnson, Elliott Donald, Dorian Ford class. That was fantastic for Pitt. I think they had Stephon Hall was also in that class. They had, 4 Whippeal kids in that class. So they do have those classes. But usually you only see, 2 at most out of that group. You'll land a Dayon Hayes. You'll land a Jordan Whitehead. You'll land a Paris Ford, a DeMar Hamlin. You'll land these very talented Whippeal kids. And some of the best players in Pitt have been those Whippeal kids. But Pitt's also, when they've had kids that, say, have come from outside the Whippeal footprint, it hasn't always been great for them. They haven't gotten a ton of high-rated kids. Now, Pat Bostic came out of that area, who was super highly rated, didn't end up being what you really wanted. And so, I look at what Pitt can do in that area. And this is exactly what Pitt wants. Pitt wants to look at guys like a Kenny Johnson and get them. Pitt wants to look at a guy like an Alex Irby and try to get them. And that's what Pitt looks for, right? That's what Pitt wants. Because on their all-time board, they don't get a lot of guys out of the eastern part of PA. That's just our part of PA. And there's a talent-rich area for them to dive into. and they've put a few offers out there. And that, to me, speaks to a lot of what they're trying to do. And 2024 is going to be a class where they're going to focus on the whip wheel. Cameron Lindsay from Aliquippa, Quentin Martin from Jeanette, Anthony Specca from Central Catholic, and Quentin Martin in particular is going to be a huge battle. 12th overall in the class of 2024, could be a 5-star player. That one's going to be tough, so the whip wheel's going to be an emphasis. But also the inroads Pitt has made in Philadelphia. If let's say they land even just one of Specca, Lindsay, Martin, especially if they land two, along with some of these guys from the eastern part of the state, man, that'd be huge. And plus the Florida, Georgia, all these other kids that they're looking at. Central and Eastern PA, it's going to be an area Pitt's going to try and target and pluck 1, 2 guys out of that. They're going to try and get, 3, 4 guys out of PA because PA is a good state to try and recruit out of. Try to keep a few guys home. And it's a change that we're seeing with Pitt. Tyquan Underwood's done a great job there. Corey Sanders has done a fantastic job. Worked over years here at Pitt to try and build something there. And you've seen some inklings. Javon McIntyre coming here from Imhotep is just not usual. You don't see guys from that school come to Pitt very often. And Pitt's made little inroads here and there in Philly. And I think they're starting to get a little bit more respect from coaches and everyone else in that area. And Pitt's getting a little highly talked of in that area. I think that's huge for the Panthers. All right, folks, as always, thanks for listening. We'll see. We might be on commitment watch. We'll see if that happens. We will obviously be on here to talk about that. We will be on commitment watch later in the week. Carlton Carrington, 2023 recruit, might commit. We'll also have John Garcia Jr. on later this week to talk a little bit about Pitt football recruiting. We have a good week coming up. Official visitors are coming this weekend. Pitt football recruiting is humming as well. So we'll talk about all of that this week, folks. As always, thanks for listening. And as always, folks, hail to Pitt.